All right, I'm Mark Hall-Patton. I am your MC for tonight in case you don't know who I am. I am the administrator of the Clark County Museum System. I'm very happy to have you here tonight to hear our talk on the history of the Henderson Fire Department. You can imagine any community must have a fire department. And this one, the City of Henderson, has a fire department that goes back 75 years. Fire department goes back longer than the city does. That says something. Now, we have a panel, quite a distinguished panel tonight, and we are going to be hearing from all of them, not just me. Don't worry, they'll be talking too, it's all right. I do want to remind you to, by the way, who is handing out the cards for questions? Okay, have you handed them out already? Well, obviously everything is working very well tonight. Please get a card. The way this works, we'll have our speakers speak first. If you want to ask a question, we ask that you write the question down rather than just yell out the question at some point randomly during the talk. It's kind of hard to keep track of them that way. So please get a card. They're just random, index cards. Just write down the question, and we'll have you pass those forward, and then we can answer those at the end of the talk. So it's a little bit easier that way, and we can keep track of them and make sure that we get all the information out. The one thing I would like to start with is, can I have all of the ex-chiefs of the fire department who are in the audience raise their hands, please? Now, if I can just make one point, don't say anything during the talk. Just hold your questions to the end. It wouldn't be nice. Now, our first speaker tonight is our current chief, Sean White. Sean has been, has risen through the ranks here. He is the 11th fire chief of the Henderson Fire Department. He came to the city in July of 1999 as a firefighter paramedic, rose up through captain, battalion chief, and deputy chief. And by the way, I did not write this on my notes, but I am told he is a good storyteller. So I will let you all find out for yourselves, and I will ask Chief White to begin our talk tonight.
All right, thank you, Mark. Hello, can you hear me?
Is it on?
Hello.
There you go.
All right, there you go. All right, first I'd like to thank Mark and Rick. Very honored and humbled for the invitation to be a part of this tonight. Thank you so much for thinking of me and for the fire department and having this event that we could talk about ourselves and reminisce and brag a little bit as we celebrate our 75 years of existence here in the valley, and just pleased to be here. Very thankful for also all the familiar faces in the crowd, all the retirees. Appreciate Joe Hill. I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for Joe Hill. He hired me back in 1999. I appreciate you giving me a chance to do some work here in the valley, and hopefully I've done a couple things right since you hired me. So Chief Stevens here, appreciate having you as well. I learned a lot from you and your mentorship through the years. And Town Chief Belen, I will always have a warm spot for Gene because I took his position when he retired. So I was able to be a battalion chief after him and try to live up to his shoes and his historical eyebrow. And so appreciate you guys being here. I can't go beyond retirees, past employees of the fire department without just expressing our gratitude, not just as the current fire chief, but as a citizen of Henderson, These men set a groundwork for a culture of excellence that we have just tried to continue to build from their foundation. They're great men. They believed in always going a little bit extra. What could we do better? You have a phenomenal fire department in the city of Henderson. We meet and exceed every national standard. Our outcomes are far beyond the normal fire departments. And it all started with these people who were here before us, who decided that, hey, can we do things differently? Can we constantly look at ways to improve the services that we deliver to Henderson? So thank you very much. I would also like to thank, I don't know if there's any other elected officials here, or the city managers here. I will say, you know, I've only been doing this year, actually a year today. I was promoted last year, September the 19th. So I made it a year. Does it get easier from here, Doug, or no? Yeah. But we have phenomenal support from the city manager's office currently and from our elected officials. I know that ebbs and flows through the generations, and I will tell you that this city manager's office, these elected officials have been nothing but unwavering with their support for public safety. As a brand new fire chief for the city, one of the first things I had to go in and ask for was an unfunded fire station. And they sat down, they listened to the data and the information, and they had an open mind. And I'll be darned, they said yes. So we'll just keep moving forward there. So anyway, we got great leadership currently. Very excited about the things to come. I'm going to cover that in a little bit. A little bit myself. Mark did mention a couple things. I've been doing this for 29 years. I started my career with the Albuquerque Fire Department in 1989. Worked 10 years for the Albuquerque Fire Department and decided that Southern Nevada would be a great place to continue raising our family. We tested, and we're fortunate and very blessed to be able to have the opportunity to come to the Henderson Fire Department. At that time, it was another one of those growth phases. A lot was happening with those first few years. It felt like when you're in Henderson, you just open a couple fire stations every year. And that changed, but the growth and the way the city's been planned has been exceptional. Since '99, Mark kind of told you, I promoted up through the ranks. I was very fortunate to work with some great people along the way and do some additional things. So anyway, so what I'm going to do is I am going to, since I'm kind of the new guy here, which is weird. I've been here 19 years. But I've brought our historian for our department is firefighter Garen Fulmer. He has taken this on as kind of a hobby and a love for understanding the history of our department. He's prepared a lot of the information that we have tonight. I'm going to do a kind of a high-level overview of our beginnings and our history and some of the big things that happened over the last 75 years. And I also want to cover, just briefly, some of the exciting things that are coming up right now for the city of Henderson and our continual growth as a public service entity. So many of you know the Henderson Fire Department celebrated its 75th anniversary on August the 10th, 2017. The fire department's rich history began following the 1942 construction of Basic Magnesium Incorporated, or BMI. They built a parcel of uninhabitable desert, which I like. It's uninhabitable desert, midway between Boulder City and Las Vegas. BMI's location served to be an ideal spot for the production of magnesium during World War II. But by July 1943, less than 1 year after production had begun, the plant at BMI became the world's largest producer of magnesium. Henderson's first two fire stations completed construction in August of 1942. The Town Site Fire Station, Station 1, was constructed on Atlantic Avenue and Marine Street and is still there today. It's used by Public Works. And the Plant Fire Station, Station 2, was built on Atlantic Avenue just north of Lake Mead Boulevard. The stations provided fire protection to the city and consisted of a paid and volunteer firefighters for BMI. In May of 1943, the federal government announced the change of the name from the basic town site to Henderson, Nevada. So newspapers began referring to the fire department as the Henderson Fire Department. In less than 5 years, the Henderson's population grew to approximately 13,000 plant employees and their family members. By 1947, magnesium production was no longer necessary for the defense efforts, and most of the BMI employees moved away. But with the help of local industry, the city of Henderson, Nevada was officially incorporated on April the 16th, 1953. In that next month, May 1953, Henderson's population was 7,410 people. In July of 1953, the BMI plant donated the entire fire brigade consisting of 2 converted ambulances, 1 Chevrolet pickup truck converted to a pumper, and a chemical wagon. Ambulance service was provided free of charge, and vehicles were replaced by donations and/or a $1 charge to citizens' water bills. Now we're paying about $700,000 for a fire engine, so that wasn't working anymore. So. There were a total of 24 firefighters, and the first fire chief was Paul Zink. In 1954, much of the Henderson Fire Department was given back to BMI, and the city retained the 1 station at the Town Site station on Atlantic, and it shared that building with the newly formed police department. So since then, I will jump through some of our history. I know Garen's going to cover some of the other more interesting stories in our early history. But one of the big changes really didn't come as far as the services we provided was obviously fire rescue, some chemical response capacities through those years. But 1980 was one of the big things, and it was also very common throughout the nation is when EMS entered the firehouse. And that's when the first firefighters began to get their emergency medical technician training in April of that year. The population in 1980 is 24,000 people in Henderson. Some other significant notes, which I'm sure we'll hear some stories about tonight, were 2 major events that happened, one in 1988 and also one in 1991. These 2 disasters are still 2 of the biggest disasters in our nation's history. In 1988, you probably all remember the Pepcom blast, which caused widespread damage throughout Henderson, and we had several people respond to that, and it's an absolute miracle that we didn't have anybody severely injured or killed on that call. In 1991, lost 150 tons of liquid chlorine into the air, which is one of the largest chlorine leaks in the nation's history. 1989 was when we hired our first paramedics. And that was after the PepCon event where the City Council decided that they wanted to hire paramedics and increase our emergency medicine capabilities. This is a milestone because Henderson, if you don't know, has always been known for exceptional emergency medicine. We are still one of the elite emergency medicine organizations, not only in the Valley but in the country. Those first people who developed those programs hired some really good people. I think we still have one guy working with this, Doug Koopman, still working with you. And they've continued that same quality throughout the last several decades. In 1991, we also had the new Station 95 was opened in September of that year at Pebble Road near Green Valley Parkway. From what I understand, I wasn't here obviously at that time, but that was the end of the road. There was dirt on the other side, and they said there was coyotes running around the station half the time, which is hard to imagine if you imagine where Station 95 is now. In 1997, we were very fortunate to open, then it was Station 92, connected with Paul Ruth Memorial Training Center at 401 Parkson Road, which is a state-of-the-art training center and still one of the finest in the Southwest. It has been renamed since we've gone to 2 battalions to Station 82. The year 2000 was a huge year of growth. We opened 3 fire stations in 2000. Station 96, which is now 86, at Galleria out at Lake Las Vegas. In July, Station 97 on Amador up off Horizon Ridge Parkway was opened. And in November of that same year, Station 98 at Coronado Center near Coronado High School was opened that same year. A lot of explosive growth. Like I said, it just seemed like we were opening a fire station every other week back in those early days for me. Just for your point of reference, in the year 2000, the population of Henderson was 195,000. So between 1990 and 2000, we went from 65,000 in Henderson to 196,000 in 10 years. The next station that was opened was in 2002, which is a station in Anthem, Station 99, up in Anthem off of Anthem Parkway. And that was the last station we opened for 15 years until last October. We opened Station 91 out in Inspirada on 2901 Democracy Road. And so just for your reference there, in those 17 years, from the year 2000, we were at 196,000 population to at November of 2017, just over 300,000 at 305,000 people. We're still in another explosive growth period, which is, I will tell you, exciting and terrifying all at the same time. Very excited about the things that are going on now and the ability to actually start talking about opening new stations. I know when Chief Stevens was first appointed as fire chief, we were talking about browning out fire stations because of the economic downturn and the struggles that we're having all across the nation, just dealing with difficult financial issues. Through his leadership, we never closed a fire station throughout that whole time. All of the services were kept intact and serving the community. I would like to share a couple exciting things that are happening currently in the department. All of those areas continue to create more call volume and more work. We are adding currently a renovation to Station 83. We're adding an apparatus bay at Station 83, which is at Burkholder and Lake Mead Parkway. That will enable us to run a second rescue out of that firehouse. That fire district is currently one of the busiest in the nation. Those guys are running over 5,500 calls a year just out of that firehouse. So that'll allow us to decrease that workload on that area as we move forward into the future. So we're running 2 rescues and a fire engine out of Station 83. That should be completed probably about this time next year. As I mentioned earlier, we were able to get approval for the funding of a new fire station that was needed desperately to divide out District 81, which is in the southeast area, this area of the city. District 81, when I was first appointed, we evaluated, we do a risk assessment every year, and we evaluated the area, and it just came off the page at us that District 81 was just too big, too populated, too busy, and there's no plan. Just for your reference, a normal fire district is about 7 to 8 square miles. An ideal fire district, I should say, is about 7 to 8 square miles with about somewhere between 25 to 35,000 people. An engine and a rescue with that size of a neighborhood to cover can cover that area pretty well. Last year, currently still at this time, District 81 is a little over 17 square miles with over 52,000 people in it. So it was very obvious that we needed to break that area up. It was a little difficult finding the right way to do that. We had some great people, our planning analysis group from the fire department studied the area and came up with the best location, and I'm happy to tell you that that station is in the process of being constructed. It will be at the corner of basically at Horizon and Horizon Ridge Parkway and the Hidden Falls Park. If you've been out to Hidden Falls Park, if you know where the dog park is, that's where the fire station will sit. Don't worry, we're just moving the dog park if you're using the dog park. And we'll move the dog park first. That was one of the big controversies about building a fire station. But that will help us. We had areas that were just underserved, areas in that district that were just so big geographically that we can't get there within our ideal response times. So that will help us fill in a couple holes. As you know, the city continues to grow this direction. A lot of construction out here at Nevada State and some very exciting plans for the school as well. And we already have some property identified out here as this builds out as well. In addition to that, we have a new fire station that we're planning in the Cadence development. Cadence is just north of Lake Mead Boulder Highway. That community will eventually be a community of 13,000 residents. It's currently, I don't know, we're about 1,600. They are required with their development agreement to build a fire station and equip it when they're at 2250 permits. So we're probably a year and a half, 2 years away from that fire station, but that fire station will be built on a couple streets that are out in the desert right now. Cadence Crest and Cadence View, which is in the middle of that community. It's a very well located. It'll serve that community well. It'll also help cover our busiest district, which is District 83, and it'll help also shoot out to Lake Las Vegas, which kind of sits out on an island by itself out there. So we're excited to have that. That'll be Fire Station 87. And will be our 12th fire station, as well as we're in the initial phases of planning a very large fire station, Station 91, in West Henderson. As you probably know, if you paid attention to the news or the newspapers anytime recently, there's some explosive growth planned out in West Henderson that we're very excited about. If you're a Raiders fan, you should be very excited. A lot of projects going out there. That was an exciting project for the city, obviously, because it was the first domino and a lot of people that were speculating out there. Some very quality, good projects are being planned for that area, and we'll see a lot of growth out there in the next few years. That station is in the works for a 4 or 5 bay stations, kind of like Station 82, if you've been to the training center, that will also have a truck company, an engine, and a rescue as well to open with. And will be in the city center of that development out there. So that's the exciting growth that we have coming in here in the next 4 to 5 years. A lot going on. Oh, just so the dates on that, Station 85 should be opened early 2020. Construction should happen early this next year in 19. Station 87 in Cadence has a tentative opening date of early 2021. It should be right behind Station 85. And then Station 91 out in West Henderson is tentative to look at 2023, depending on how fast that growth actually happens in West Henderson. And I would just like to also reiterate before I stop, originally, 1942, we provided some fire and rescue coverage for the community. With some, as I mentioned earlier, some chemical capabilities. Now, the Henderson Fire Department is the only triple accredited fire department in the country. We provide fire, rescue, EMS, hazmat, technical rescue. We even have a new trail rescue mission that we've had to implement over the last 3 years. Actually, Garen is part of that. We now own 4 different off-road vehicles. Our Parks and Recreation Department, which is an amazing department that builds wonderful parks, but they started building trails. And apparently people like to go out on trails, they forget to take water, and they bring their pets and aren't quite prepared, and they're about 7 or 8 miles in July, and it becomes a problem. So we're spending a lot of time out on the trails. Garen is. Thanks.
It's a wonderful thing.
It is good, but if you're going on a trail, let's just prepare, please. And other exciting technologies coming on board. We're starting a complete new drone project. The technology there is so very exciting. I'm in meetings currently where autonomous flight is not that far away. We have a company that is actually studying delivering AEDs to front doors with drones currently. You can imagine a world as we're planning this where there's a drone airport on the top of City Hall and on top of the dispatch, and a call comes in for a cardiac arrest or a structure fire. As soon as the address is put into the CAD, the computer-aided dispatch, a drone takes off, it flies over, it starts videotaping, so our guys could have live video coverage feed coming into the call so they could assess what's happening there, or bringing equipment faster to a person in need. But it's a pretty exciting times, a lot of neat things going on. We are the only full-service fire department in the Valley. We do it all. We do our complete medical system. We run our entire EMS system. That means you call 911, you'll get a Henderson Fire Department ambulance show up to your door. You'll have Henderson Fire Department people assess you, load you into an ambulance, and take you to the hospital and make sure you get the best care that you possibly can. We do not use private ambulance except for when all our ambulances are gone as auto aid. I'm very proud of our fire department, as you can see, and very thankful to and humbled to be the 11th fire chief. So thank you very much.
Our next speaker, as you've already heard the name, is Garen Fulmer. He is a sergeant major, a retired veteran of the Army, among other things. He's in his 24th year of service with the fire department, 25th, I guess.
Coming up.
25th?
Yeah, coming up on the 25th, yes.
Yeah. He's done 3 tours in Iraq as well. Working over there, helping to rebuild fire departments in Iraq, among other things. Does a few other things, he's with FEMA's Nevada Task Force 1, training and safety officer. Just kind of doesn't have much to keep himself busy, so yes. he kind of takes on various things. He's worked on the old Town Site Station 1. He's helped map the Arrowhead Trail for the BLM. Oh, and he's been the volunteer historian for the fire department for, 24 years, something like that as well. Apparently somebody who finds it difficult to stay busy.
Yes.
So I think he's going to be speaking to the history now.
Yes.
Yes?
Yep,
Darren?
absolutely. Thank you, Mark, and thank you, Chief White. I'm really grateful to be here. It's really an honor to have something you have a passion for, which I do for history, and hopefully everybody here does as well. To have a passion for it and then actually be able to do something with that. So I'm very grateful for all the chiefs that are in this room, especially for my current chief, Adam White. They allow me to actually be a historian and to help the fire department actually remember where its roots come from. And while I'm at it, besides thanking the chief for having a job, I want to thank this gentleman right here, who you'll meet next. Doug Hart was the old crusty engineer at the fire department when I was the new rookie. And Doug held down the fort for Henderson Fire and keeping our history together. And so when I came on board, I, of course, was interested in history. And Doug was gracious enough to hand me the entire keys. He said, "It's all yours," right? So that was 24 years ago. And let's give applause to Doug for giving me this. So, all right, so I would not be up here if it wasn't for Doug passing the torch to the new guy. I also want to give a shout out to this sharply just gentleman in front of me, Jonathan Robbins. He will be the historian that replaces me to make sure that the chief gets all his facts right. So, right. So, Jonathan, thank you. A bit of protocol. Is it against the camera rules or Mark's rules to walk around with the microphone? All right. Well, if I squeal this, I apologize. All right. All right. So, I'm going to talk about history. The chief did a wonderful job talking about where we are. So I want to talk a little bit about how we got to where we are. All right. And so for the rookies in our rookie school, they all know, much to their chagrin, that the history class I teach them is a 4-hour class. And I can go longer than that, but usually there's somebody to stop me. All right. So I will need Mark's help. Right? When I hit that point where people cannot absorb anymore, right, and the fruit starts throwing, I need Mark to tell me that it's time to give it to Doug. So.
I'm not sure when that point starts.
All right.
That's, you got to understand.
Okay. All right. Like Mark said, I'm a proud 24-year veteran for the Henderson Fire Department. And I was not born here. I'm not a true native. I was born in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. And then my family moved us out here in '69. And so that was the growth of the airport is what brought my family out here. So I'm not truly a native, like probably most of you in the room, but I consider myself to be a native. I grew up in the desert. I grew up in right on the outskirts of Henderson. I think most of you remember the days when you had to drive from Vegas and drive all the way through that ugly desert to get to Henderson, right? That separate city, right? So I was part of that. And I was lucky enough to be hired by Joe Hill, and he hired me, took a chance on me, and that was quite some time ago. In that time, he didn't get to keep me too much. I ended up actually doing a 30-year career in the U.S. Army as well, 10 years active service, 10 years reserve, and 10 years guard. And so that kept me quite busy and away from the fire department for a good chunk of my career. So I'm glad they still kept me. However, history. When I got hired, I turned to Doug Hart and all of the other senior guys in the room, and I said, "Why are our fire engines white?" All right, and I tell you what, there was an opinion everywhere along the way, like "shut up, rookie," to "I don't know," right? So, yes.
We did a study, a nationwide empirical study about what was the safest color for an emergency vehicle.
Yes.
They said red looked black at night.
Yep.
And white was, and so I ordered the truck to be painted white.
And there we go.
There you
Yeah, all right. So the chief stole a little bit of my thunder. I was going to talk about the study. So, okay, now to fill the rest of the time. So, no, the point was I got hired and I asked questions and the people around me at the time didn't have answers. And my love for history is a love, detective love. It's a love of finding out information. And hopefully you're all here for the same. I do have some slides. I'll ask Mark to maybe scroll through every so often as I talk about some of the history. I only have 25 of them, so this won't be the 4-hour class. This will be the 30-minute class, right? So, however, questions. That's what brought me to find out the history of Henderson. We had something sort of tragic happen in Henderson, and that was that all of the guys that were hired in the 40s during the old BMI Plant protection days, because of city finances, pretty much all quit or moved on back to the plants and the government payroll when the city became a city. And so we ended up with only 2 firemen in 1953, basically. And the chief, oh yeah, that's great. Leave that up there. All right, has nothing to do with what I'm talking about, but it's a great photo. I'll get to this. All right, so we sort of lost our first 12 years of history because the 2 guys that were standing there, one guy was a guy that had some of that 40s history, but he didn't stay long, right? And the other guy, because he could type, he became the city's first fire chief, right? But he was hired literally just weeks before. So all of the guys that knew anything quit. And so now this chief that stayed for about another 28 years, that chief didn't have anybody to ask questions like, why are the trucks white? All right. So by the time he was ready to retire in the 70s, right, the only 1 or 2 people that were around for that early part of our history were all now retiring in the 70s. And we all know that the growth of Henderson is in spurts, right? And the 70s and the 80s was one of those spurts. So when I got hired in the 90s, we didn't have that continuity of historians. Thank God Doug Hart was scrapbooking and doing what he could to keep those pieces together. All right. So I spent the last 24 years digging. I visited Mark at his little foxhole there that he has there off Boulder Highway, and just started digging and digging. Many of the photos you see here were things that I came across in the archives up in Missoula, Montana. All right. A lot of the government photographs went out of state with the company that came after the McNeil Corporation. So a lot of things got spread all around. So a lot of those photos over the last 20 years, I managed to bring back, and a lot of those I gave to special collections. Some of those then made it onto websites and elsewhere. So you're going to see a lot of photos that were collected over 20 years. Now, I want to bring your attention to this, right? This is a bonus round for the audience. So anybody know what Plan Core, Jonathan, you can't answer this one. All right, Plan Core 201. Has anybody ever heard that before? Plan Core 201. It's probably the first word or phrase that should mean anything to Henderson. So let me take you back. Let me take you back before the BMI plant was built. The United States government was having secret discussions with a little nation called Britain. Britain was in trouble in the early 40s, late 30s, however you want to look at it. They were in trouble. They were an island nation. They couldn't provide for themselves, and Germany was putting a stranglehold on them. Britain had something that the United States wanted. Britain had the formulas and the blueprints to make magnesium, all right? Magnesium is going to be critical for future war efforts. The British cannot build a plant in Britain because guess what's coming to their shores? War, right? So Britain says, we will trade you some of our top secret formulas and plans for a program you're going to call Lend-Lease. Right? Anybody remember the Lend-Lease deal? Remember we were like, why were we sending all that stuff over there? Well, there was a trade. Right? The U.S. government traded for the British secrets. One of those secrets was a secret that they called Plan Core 201. Plan Core 201 was, we're going to take a British spy, and we're going to give you blueprints. We're going to stick this British spy on a ship, because at the time in the late 30s, early 40s, right, there was no transatlantic flights at the time, but that came next, right? So they put this spy on a ship, and they said, we're going to sail you to New York, and you're going to give the plans to the Americans. These plans are the plans for a factory and how to make magnesium, all right? So they put that spy on the ship, and guess what happened? The Nazis found out about it. They sunk that ship, trying to get rid of the spy, all right? That ship that sank was one of the ships that caused us to get into the war. Remember some of the ships, the civilian ships that were being sunk by the Nazis before the war? This is a travesty. Well, some of those ships were full of British spies sending the stuff over. The Nazis wanted to stop it. Plan Core 201, the spy survived, the plan survived. They retrofitted an aircraft in Britain to make a transatlantic flight, which really had not been done other than experimentally. And we're going to put the spy on it and fly him to Iceland, and then fly him over to Nova Scotia and fly him to the United States. So the blueprints arrived. When the government got Plan Core 201, they said, okay, we need a plant that's not on the East Coast. We need a plant that's not on the West Coast. We need some place that's safe from bombs. We need some place with lots of water. We need some place close to the minerals for magnesium production. And we need some place where we have lots of free electricity. Right? Does anybody know where that place is? Right, all right. Now, of course, to continue with the conspiracy or the secrets, Plan Core 201, part of that was interesting in the fact that they decided to find a place that would confuse people. The government decided to build the plants at a place called Midway City, Nevada. Anybody ever heard that? Right. It doesn't exist, right? But we see that in the things we pick up as historians. So Midway City never existed. The closest thing to Midway City might have been the residents that lived in Pittman, right? You know, the people on the water sources. Yes? Oh, I thought somebody said something there for me. So Midway City was picked because we had Hoover Dam for electricity. We had Hoover Dam for water. We had Gabbs, Nevada. If you've ever been there, it's a lovely spot. All right. Gabbs, Nevada for the minerals. All right. And so we got everything we need to build the secret Plan Core 201 magnesium plant. All right. So any guesses how long it took the company to build the entire city of Henderson, the 2 fire stations, right? Everything you see here burned down, right? And the plants. Anybody want to take a guess how long it took the company to build the entire thing? The Lima Hospital, the cantinas, the Elks Lodge, all of it. Anybody want to take a guess? Up in the back? 10 months. Nailed it. All right, nailed it. 10 months. So the government needed to build this and build it in a hurry. So they said, we're going to pick the company that's going to do it. Now this is what's tying into this great photo here. So the government picked the company that's going to actually build the entire city and plants in 10 months. And that company is a company that was called McNeil Corporation. McNeil Corporation was based out of Los Angeles, basically. And they could build big stuff, not this big, but they got the project. All right, so what you're looking at here is the plant administrative building. This was Henderson's first fire. All right, 7 March 1942. We didn't even really have firemen there yet. As a matter of fact, the best I can tell from the records, there were 4 firemen at the site while they were trying to build the entire city and plants in 10 months. You got to keep that in mind. They're going to go from nothing, Midway City, to the everything in 10 months. So they decided to hire our first chief, Paul Zink. I've got a great photo thanks to, where's Mark? Where'd he go? Oh, yeah, Mark's right there, but sorry. Yeah, right, thank you. He gave me a great photo I'll show you in a minute. McNeil Corporation got the job to build everything in 10 months. As soon as they put the administrative building up, it burned down mysteriously, right? And that's what you're looking at. So, how many of you are people that like to read newspapers? All right, probably a few of us, if they still exist, right? All right, so our first fire was very suspicious because guess what we kept in the administration building? the top secret plans to build Plan Core 201. All right? In that, and I can't see it in the photo, I believe it's off camera over here where the bulldozer marks are, but there was a concrete vault built to put in the wooden structure for the administration structure. Those firemen didn't have a fire truck, we didn't have anything out there. When the fire started, they got on a bulldozer and they pushed dirt over the building while it was burning down around them to cover the vault. So our first fire was a very mysterious fire. And this is where it gets even more interesting for history. Right? So what you're looking at is the aftermath of the fire. The plans were they did survive the fire because of the dirt put on the vault, right? So they uncovered it, the plans were great, construction started again the next day. But this started something interesting that we see even in today's society. Today when you watch the news, right, it's political left, political right, right? All right, and this started the political left and political right, even in a time of war. So, certain senators from Nevada were upset that they didn't get the contract to build this. Right? Who got the contract? McNeil Corporation from Los Angeles. So one part of the politics side during war started screaming that this was Halliburton. This was the vice president owns this company. You guys follow? We had this going on. If you look at the newspapers in 1942, half of the newspapers are screaming that this was a job given to somebody that shouldn't have got it, right? And the other half were saying, no, this was fair, right? So it was very interesting. Now, why do I go back to this fire? Not only is it interesting, but guess who got blamed for this fire? 3 German immigrants in New York that were accused of spying. Anybody ever heard of the 3 Germans that were caught on the East Coast in New York? Guess what they got blamed starting this fire? So they were blamed to start this. Now, I as a historian have never found, and I don't think anybody ever will, find who really started the fire. It was arson, right? But they don't know if it was accidental, you might say, or if it was purposely started. I mean, they were trying to build an entire city in 10 months. They could have piled some stuff around some stuff they shouldn't have, right? So, however, the newspapers are full of, this was not a sabotage from German Nazi spies that we caught on the East Coast. This was the McNeil Corporation burning all of the records proving this was given to them illegally. So guess what was in the administration building? All of the records proving the McNeil Corporation got the job fairly. All right? So our first fire for Henderson Fire Department was Nazi spies, it was saboteurs, it was political intrigue, it was, people giving companies business they shouldn't have been giving, right? Sound familiar? Right? It's like today's age. This is like something out of the pages today. So I want to skip to the next one, please, Mark. All right, so this slide's only in here because this was the McNeil Corporation. I alluded to it. They did a wonderful job building the entire city of Henderson in 10 months. They just turned the keys over 10 months. All the cantinas, all the housing, and we'll talk about that a little more in a minute. So, Mark, would you go to the next one, please, sir? All right, so this is about Henderson fire history. I wanted to talk about our first fire. I wanted to talk about our first fire was Nazi saboteurs, or maybe just political intrigue, or maybe just an accident, right? But it makes for good storytelling. So this is the Town Site Fire Station. If you go behind El Dorado Casino, the parking garage, it's still there. It pretty much still looks like that. Thank God this building is so unattractive to people that they have left it alone. Okay, so people drive past, the redevelopment guys are driving by and they're like, yeah, let's bulldoze that. What's over there? I don't know. Right? So luckily this is still here. This has been an ongoing passion of myself and the chiefs and some of the gentlemen in this room for at least 15 years of my career. We've been trying to make sure that this stays something I have been for 15 years. 3 failed attempts, but we have an awesome mayor and a fire chief that are behind doing something positive historically with it. So the building's still there. It looks pretty much the same. This is an awesome photo because this is the oldest photo of the Town Site Fire Station that I can find. And again, the date's about 1943, right? So this is still a few months or so after the ribbon cutting. What I love about this photo is that's our first Engine 1. Now you got to understand that we were government back then. We weren't City of Henderson. Does anybody know how we became the City of Henderson besides the charter? Anyone? Bueller? Bueller? No? Okay, Mark? Yeah, okay, all right. So just throw fruit if I get this off a little bit. So what's one of the first things that gets built when you're building an entire city from scratch? Post office. Right, you build a post office first. The post office, as a bureaucracy, they have a habit of, they always name their post offices after somebody, right? So back before Twitter and Facebook and cell phones, right? The workers that are going to come here and fill this city in 10 months, right? They're going to need a place to have their mail go to. Because we're bringing our workers in not from the Las Vegas area, we're bringing them from all over the nation, right? In particular the South. So the post office has to be built and up and running first, top priority. Post office just on their own said, hey, we need to name it after somebody. Well, there was a senator that had never been to Clark County, but he was on the Senate Appropriations Committee that gave the illegal contract to the McNeil Corporation, right? His name was Charles Belknap Henderson. So he was very influential in getting us the City of Henderson, right? So the post office said, hey, this guy's from Nevada, even if,
Right.
no, what's that?
And he was from Nevada.
Yes,
Was
he
it
was,
Nevada?
yes. He was from Nevada, right? So they said, hey, he's from Nevada. This is the only guy we have that we can find. Hey, let's name the post office after him. So the second order of effects are this. Where's the mail going to? This is before zip codes. So what's addressed on the envelope to go to this place? Henderson, Nevada, right? So we were named Henderson, Nevada. Now the city had a choice to change the name when it chartered, but it chose to stay Henderson, Nevada. Right?
Now, Darren,
So, yes, sir.
do you know what we got from Mr. Henderson?
What did we get, Mark?
The only thing, because he never came here, but we did get
Yes,
an
that is true.
autographed photograph from him. That the city still has. That's the only thing we ever got from Mr. Henderson.
All right. So, isn't Henderson history interesting? I mean, it's just, wow, okay, you know. So because the post office has this idiosyncrasy of naming buildings after somebody, that's where the mail's going. So we're Henderson, Nevada because of those reasons, right? Now, he was on the Senate Appropriations Committee that gave us the money for the Magnesium Plant Core 201 plant. All right, so this was Town Site Station 1. The government built 2 fire stations because it had deep pockets. It said, we'll build one in the middle of all the little buildings that are the family houses, and we'll build one by the plants. That's the big station with all the bays and the truck companies and all the big apparatus. So one station's going to take care of the plants and most of the tech stuff and the chemical wagon stuff the chief talked about. And the next one's going to take care of the population, the little township. So go to the next slide, please, Mark. All right, this is, go backwards one. That fire engine right there, 1943, engine 1, go to the next one, please, is that one. All right, this was taken just a few months ago. All right, it took 20 years to find this thing. It still exists. The chiefs just confirmed the serial number, and it still runs. All right, so yeah, okay, so where is it, Chief? Tonopah, Nevada. All right.
Trying to get it.
Yep. So if you have any political clout and you want the chief for us, the City of Henderson, to get our old Engine 1 back, please let the chief know after the meeting. So there's old Engine 1, right? This is, you can't get any better than this. Thankfully, the volunteers up in Tonopah, they've taken care of this darn thing. So, all right, next slide, please. Okay, so the chief was telling that we are a full-service department. One of the things we're full service for is ambulance transport, right? Medical, all right? You got to think back in 1942, how many hospitals were in the Vegas Valley? Well, you can't count, I'm not counting clinics or midwife places or anything like that, right? Actual definition hospital, 1942. What's that, Chief? 2. Okay, and what were they? Las Vegas Hospital. Okay, so the ones on the Las Vegas Hospital are closer to the correct. Yeah, so we had one hospital. Well, how far away is Fremont Street from where the plants are? Long way. So the government had to build a hospital, right? And they built DeLima. DeLima was the first real hospital, not right, full, what we think of as a modern hospital. DeLima was the first, and it's still there, the little low-rise, the office one that no one, it's like the fire station, it's invisible, right? Right, that's the old hospital. I excluded a great photo of this because I didn't want to keep you guys for 4 hours, but the government had a problem, right? We're Midway City, right? Between Boulder City and Las Vegas. We're not going to transport people to that little hospital on Fremont Street or what later became Southern Nevada Hospital, right? So what we're going to do is we're going to have to provide full service. So the firemen basically just drove this thing, right? If you were injured, you got in the back, right? So medical care wasn't quite what it is today. But this right here was our first ambulance. Now look at the door. What's it say on there? McNeil Company First Aid Department. So the Henderson Fire Department has gone through quite a few names in its heritage, its history, right? The BMI, the Plant Protection, Plant Safety, Henderson Fire Department, McNeil Fire Department. We've had lots of different names. We're the same people, all right? Same history, same town site station, right? But we've gone through a number of name changes in that growth. Next one, please, Mark. Oh. You're off duty, Mark. Thank you. All right. So I want to thank someone in this room. Thank you, all right, for this photo. All right. So this is a great photo because it ties in a couple of things with our history that gets confusing with the loss of historians, right? So this right here is old station, town site station 1, right? And firemen, right? They have off-duty time. What do? They go hunting. Right? What do? They bring the deer to the fire station. What do? They skin it. Now, notice station 1, see the kitchen? Right? So I don't know if you guys, right? The kitchen's right there, right? So we're going to have venison for dinner that night. All right? What you see there in the photo is a very, very rare photo. I just got this. The man on your right there with the hat on is Paul Zink. It's the best photo I've ever seen in 20 years of the chief. I have photos of Paul Zink, our first fire chief. Paul Zink was an interesting character. He had done 30 years with Los Angeles City as a fireman, as a captain. And when the Army said, hey, when the military said, hey, we need someone to go be the chief of this fire department, all the healthy young firemen were all overseas fighting or getting ready to, right? And so they tapped this 30-year captain of LA City and said, well, you're now going to be the chief. And Paul Zink was the chief all the way through those war years. He actually stayed as our first chief for the city of Henderson when we became the new city of Henderson. But Henderson, the first few weeks of its existence, declared bankruptcy, couldn't pay for the firemen, so most of them left. Paul Zink went back to the government job to run the plants after that. And so we ended up with Paul Zink leaving in about 1954, about 7 months after the creation of the city. He left and left it to that chief that could type, right? Our first chief, right? So, but that's Paul Zink. That's a great photo of him. This is really, really great to have this. This was also our city's first, yes?
I have to correct this a little bit. This is actually, I emailed the photo to Mr. Fulmer, but I graded it from our Hall-Patton's museum collection. When they closed up their business at the Henderson Home News, they sent all of their old photos to the museum.
Awesome.
And I've been trying to figure out, I was one of the people I asked to help identify people in old pictures, because I'm old. And I couldn't figure out what this was until I read the notes that Yarn was present today.
Yes, and so what I was going to tell you about this photo, besides being, this is truly awesome that Mark held on to this, that it exists, because this is a great photo of this gentleman that we didn't have a good photo of. So Paul Zink, he's there with the firemen. Why this photo? Now look, this costs a lot of money in those days to take a photo of this quality. Why would they take a photo of the chief with a deer at the fire station, right? Well, there's a great story behind it. When the city became a city, right? So this photo, I'm not sure if it's dated. Do you have dates on it?
Most of these are dated at least to the month.
Okay.
The
you might-
interesting thing is the Henderson Home News had a photographer. They would shoot these, but they would not run them in the newspaper. It is not clear to us why they had a photographer, because they didn't use photographs at that point. Don't ask me why.
Okay, well-
We've got the photographs.
Yeah, we
They
got the
didn't use
photograph.
them.
So, I don't have a date on the photograph, but as far as a historian goes, one of the more interesting thing is when we became a city and chartered in '53, right? Town site fire, when the city said we're broke and they gave back the old Station 2, most of the fire apparatus, most of the firemen, right? We kept 2 firemen. Paul Zink stayed on for a little bit. What's interesting is old Station 1, Town Site Fire Station, became then the city's first city hall. It became the first jail, became the first police station. So it was the first fire station, but then when the city chartered, they just put everything in this building. And what's interesting is the city, the meetings for the city government and all the elections was held in that at bay. Well, the mayor came by, our first mayor came by and said, hey, you can't gut deer in here, this is City Hall, right? And one of our first city ordinances by the mayor, at least verbally, was that the Henderson firemen are not allowed to skin and gut deer at the fire station. And that was one of our first city. So I believe that this photo is why it is what it is because of that happening. Because we're like the mayor coming in and saying, yeah, you can't do this, this is City Hall. Right? So now, does anybody happen to know who the other gentlemen with the Navy tattoos are? I don't know. It's not a rhetorical question. So, okay.
Is that St. Timothy's Church?
It's best that I could tell. Yeah, absolutely. I can tell you that absolutely that's old Station 1, right? And I do know the story about the mayor, hey, firemen can't gut deer here. But to have a photographer come and have the chief pose with the deer, right? I'm pretty sure it's tied with that story. All right, so let's see if I can operate this as good as Mark. Okay, that is old Station 2. I may have a better photo of this. So this is about the same time. Again, this was the plant station. Later firemen would then refer to this. This was bulldozed in about 1988. All right, but older Henderson firemen said, "Oh, that's the BMI Plant station." But this was old Station 2. It was open the exact same time everything else was. Here's a better photo of it with some of the apparatus. I have this photo in here because I wanted to point out that the fire engines are not white, right? They are red, right? And so when you look at our apparatus now, they're white. They have some red on it, but right, it's part of our history. So what is really cool about this, it's very hard to tell. I apologize, especially blown up like this, but our first fire helmets, for those historians out there, were paper mache pith helmets. Right? So they were really sun hats, right? So, and I knew that, but I had no photo evidence until this photo came out. So there's our first firemen wearing their paper, it's literally newspaper paper mache on wire pith helmets, right? So, okay. Okay, all right, this is a great photo. Deep pockets. The government built a plant in the middle of nowhere, so it needs to build a hospital, it needs to build ambulances. So what's neat about this historically is this is a picture of a 6-man, fully manned, right, heavy rescue, right, in 1944. Henderson, Nevada, because of the deep pockets of the government, was able to provide a 6-man heavy rescue squad, and that's what you see here. So we had the first heavy, and for firemen in the room, you know about technical rescue and heavy rescue. This is a big deal, right? So I love showing this photo to Las Vegas County firemen, right? I love showing it, so it's a great photo. Those are all naval rebreathers for those that are historians out there. All right, now, I put this one in here because this is a photo I came across, and Paul Zink is listed as one of the people in this photo. So if somebody's better at facial recognition than I am, right, I would love for you to let me know if you spot who it is. Now remember, this is LA City, and Paul Zink was a 30-year captain of that. So I can guess from the helmets who those might be, but I just don't recognize Paul Zink. So maybe somebody's better than that. So that's a great photo of Paul Zink's in there somewhere, just don't know where. All right. Okay, I just put this in here because I wanted to highlight the fire department's tie to the community. And I think the fire department will always be tied to the community. What I like about it, that's a full Christmas tree they're putting on the Water Street, right? So Henderson firemen don't mess around, right? The county puts up wreaths, we put up trees, right? So that's just kind of a great photo of the first uniforms and the first tree. Oops, okay. This is a great photo. I don't know why in the 40s, right? The government loved to take photos of people all standing next to each other. All right, so there's, in his archives probably, at least all the ones I looked at, it's row after row of guys doing this, right? I guess it beats the fig leaf post. So, you know, but this is a great photo because in our beginning, we unfortunately also had police officers, right? Now, they were called security guards back in the war days. But these are mostly the police officers. And then, what I love about this, so this is about 1943, so about a year or so after we've opened for business. These two gentlemen are firemen, right? So this is a great photo showing the blue jean pants and the hats and the badges. And if you ever want to see any of those badges, I know Mark probably has a secret collection, but you can come by Parkson Road Fire Station. We have a display of old historic badges that go back to the 40s, right? So you're welcome to look at those. All right, so we got two firemen, and then I think that's a G-man on the end, right? I don't know who he is, so. All right, so this here is a great photo because this photo is neat because this is circa 1954, and you could probably date that from the rolled up pant legs of the young lady here, right? It's the archery club using the fire station. Somebody took a photo. I'm glad it existed because this is 1954, so this is after we've become a city, right? Right? And the town site, this is the town site fire station in the background. But what do you see on the engine cowling? Right? So another name, Basic Magnesium Project, right? So even a year after we become a city, right, we still got the name stuck on the engine, right? So, okay, this is another photo. Now remember, when the city gave back most of the fire department, right? Because the government said, "Hey, congratulations, City of Henderson, you're now in a city. Here's Town Site Fire Station, Station 2. Here is all of the apparatus and 35 firemen." Right? And we promise we're going to give you money to pay for all that. And then immediately when the city chartered, the government said, "Oh, we don't have the money." So the city said, "Okay, you can take back Station 2, you can take back the rescue unit, the ambulances, you can take back just about everything, leave 2 firemen in the town site station," right? What's nice though is the plant protection still existed for a while. And of course, that led people, the earlier firemen, they started, "Oh, no, that's the plant protection. That's not Henderson Fire Department," right? So this is a great photo because we still have the leftover when this building was given to the city. The older photos, you'll see it says plant safety protection or something like that. When this was given to the city, the firemen put fire department up proper. But this is now 55. So this is a picture of the plant guys that stayed plant guys, right? Some of the early firemen. So that they stayed that for a number of years until the government just sold them off and then closed it all. Okay, there we go. All right. This is Town Site Fire Station 1. Just a great photo of, since we were broke, right, how do we get firemen, right? We hire explorers or trainees, right, if we don't have the money to hire proper firemen. So this photo is some of the high school kids that were going through the fire program to try to fill that void of paid firemen. So it's just a great photo. And that is Fire Engine 1, and you can still see it still says magnesium on it. Okay. All right. How many fire engine buffs are out there? Anyone? Anybody want to guess what this engine is? What's that? Yeah, well, it's very close. It's a 28. All right. So it's a 1928 engine. See the date up there, 56. All right. That was a kind of a tragic year for Henderson Fire Department. So when we became a city and we said we're broke and we ended up with 2 firemen, the city said, hey, we're not going to pay to have firemen and police, right? And they couldn't get Metro, the sheriffs at the time, sheriff's deputies to sign a contract to come out here. So what happened is the city says we're going to go to public safety. We're going to save everybody money. The firemen will be cops during the day, and at night they'll be firemen, right? You know, kind of vice versa. I'm sort of smoozing over the story, but basically cops and firemen are the same for a number of years. During that time we didn't have money. So one of those things, and I don't have a photo of them, I apologize. I thought I put it in the slide. There was a Connecticut state trooper hired in the early 50s when we became a city. He wanted to move his family out west. His name was Ed Meager. Ed Meager was a state trooper, police background. He applied out here. I don't know how he got out here. I haven't been able to talk to family members, but he came out here. He immediately got a job at the City of Henderson Public Safety Department. He's a Connecticut state trooper. I mean, he's got experience. This is the guy we want. Well, I found the records where Ed Meager was hired as a fireman. Right? They didn't hire him as a policeman, right? They hired him as a fireman. And on a certain day in 1956, Ed Meager was, during the day, a cop. And what happened is the firemen were really a rotational duty. They were really the police dispatchers. So there was one guy at the firehouse, the Town Site Firehouse, and he manned the radio and the telephones, and he was right there to be the city clerk and everything else, right? The few policemen we had out on the streets were they would do whatever they're doing. If a fire call came in, then all the policemen would come to the fire station or go to the fire. Whoever got to the fire station first did what? Jumped on the fire engine and drove the fire engine to the fire. Well, in 1956, Ed Meager, the policeman, right, came to Station 1. He was the only one there. He jumped on the brand new engine, right, that had no training on. He jumped in it, no seat belts, no roll bars, no nothing. He drove it out of Town Site Station 1 and into the intersection of Lake Mead and Boulder Highway. And he ran into an Anderson milk truck. Yeah, and he was killed. Yeah, so he was killed driving a fire truck to a fire. Now, interesting history comes up next, right? So Ed Meager, the rest of the police that showed up, / firemen, whatever you want to call them, it's all the same thing. When they showed up, the Anderson milk truck driver, there was 2 guys in the truck. The driver himself had some injuries, and he was walked over to the St. Delima Hospital, right? When the rest of the firemen, policemen got there and saw Ed Meager dead, right? They immediately wanted to know where the milk truck driver was, right? And they immediately formed a lynch mob and went over to the hospital to pull the driver out of the ER. The doctor had to hide the Anderson milk truck driver in a broom closet to protect him from the police officers. They were angry, right? So now what came out of it is at the time we had a public safety director, and he was a policeman, right? George Chrysler was his name, right? And so, Chrysler, thank you, sorry. And so he immediately, being an experienced guy, he said, hey, Ed was one of ours, right? And so the police department since '56 identifies Ed Meager as a line of duty death for the police department. but truly, he's also a line of duty death for the fire department because he was hired as a fireman. I have that in the records of the city. He was driving a fire engine to a fire, right? But because that gentleman stepped up and said he was one of ours, right, and we're going to take care of him on the police side of things, he's been identified as a policeman ever since. But this engine exists because the one that Ed Meager was driving was wrecked, right, destroyed. And so this was a loaner engine from the plants, right? The government guys gave us a 1928, and we ran with that until we got our engine fixed. All right, great photo. This is one of the engines that got fixed, right? Joe, do you know which one this one is? It's the Crown, yep. And it's the Crown without the top on. Yeah, so, all right. And what color is it, Joe?
It's red, isn't it, Bob?
All right, hey, wait, what's this? Hey, same engine? Yeah, they just washed it. This is a great photo of the same engine, right? So I thought I had another one with the top on it, but it doesn't matter. This is supposed to be not a 4-hour lecture, so. All right, so, yes. All right, so this is a great photo of some of our earlier firemen and the uniforms they wear. This is, guess where, Town Site Station, right? So is anybody in the audience here that's in that photo? I tried to list out what I thought the correct order was. I'm sure I'll get corrected, but as a historian, I want to know what the facts are. So notice I've got 6 people listed, and how many people are in the photo? Yeah. So if anybody out there has good facial recognition, or maybe Mark's got a slide somewhere that shows who they are, I can make sure they're in the right order. All right, so this one I put on here because I was hoping you guys could tell me. Right, so I kind of got it worked out, but I really want to work it out a little more. All right. Oh, hey, beautiful name, beautiful crown, isn't it? So even if it's not red anymore, they washed it. Oh, there it is. There's with the top on it. All right. Okay, so I think everybody understands, if you're a historian or love history, right? What's the government rule about what is historic and what is not? Mark, do you know? What's the number?
Normally 50, but
Normally
I don't
50.
buy it.
So everybody who's over 50, show me that you're a historic relic. Raise your hand. Okay, there's all our relics. Okay. So I'm gonna end my 4-hour, 30-minute talk. All right. Really, for us, going back 50 years really is going back to about 1968. All right. But I thought I'd put this in here because this is a great photo. I knew that there would be some old codgers in here who actually probably are in that photo. Yeah. And so I wanted to put that up there because I'm like, hey, I know there's going to be some guys in the audience that are in that photo. All right. So I've gone past my 50-year relic, but I wanted to put that in there. And of course, I wanted to tie this in with whatever the chief was saying, right? Because I want that next promotion. And so I thought I'd put PepCon in there since he talked about it. So, all right. I know Mark is eager to kick me off the stage. I'm very grateful that you gave me 30 or so minutes of your time. I'm hoping that some of these photos were interesting. I'm hoping that some of the information was interesting. So I'm going to now pass the mic over to...
Yeah, just set it.
I'll set it down and Mark will do the introductions. Thank you so much.
All righty. Our next speaker will be Doug Hart, who, among other things, was Henderson's first EMT, the previous historian for the Henderson Fire Department. One of the notes here says that when we know about the fire at the Hilton Hotel, that was the one that actually made the difference in the laws that cover high-rise hotel fires. You know, the one that was at the MGM Grand, but that wasn't the one that actually changed the laws. And when the one that happened at the Hilton happened, Doug apparently ran up, 30 floors, was it?
Yeah, the Hilton at the time was 30 floors,
Yes. And
But,
so you went up 30 floors carrying,
but the stairs were switchbacks because of the
Oh, boy.
They were so high, the floors. So that would have been 60 flights of stairs.
I'll let him do that run. I'm sorry. But he did that. But he was the first EMT for the Henderson Fire Department. And he served at the first fire station in Green Valley, or as I like to say, West Pittman. So I will... Doug Hart is our next speaker tonight.
How do I follow him? I'll keep it brief because she's got more to do. But yeah, the Hilton fire, there was 4 or 5 of us told to go to the roof, fully turned out, air packs, turnouts and everything. I think there was 4 or 5 of us told to go to the roof and work our way down, check for rescues. And I think there was only 3 of us, I think, that made it to the roof. The rest just petered out along the way, and it was hard. Masks and everything, it was just miserable. And we got up there, and they told us we didn't have to work our way down because it was already covered. So it was kind of strange. They had a helicopter up there, and they just said, "Do you want to walk back down, or do you want to take the helicopter?"
What engine were you on back then?
That was Station 92.
92.
And Station 92 was across from Wells Park, wasn't
Wells Park.
it? Okay.
Yep, that's it.
But
That's still there. It's got lawnmowers in it.
that station was tiny. I mean, it was so small. To go to the bathroom, you had to step in the shower to close the door. And if you sat down on the commode, your knees was against the wall. Some of these bigger guys.
Doug, one of my favorite stories, Doug, what about hosing down the wall there in summer? You guys do
Oh, yeah. There was no air. There was no nothing. It was so you'd go out and hose down the west wall with hoses to cool it down in the bedroom just a little bit, Oh, it was miserable. Trying to think. We had a rescue at 3 Kids Mine. And this kid, I can't remember if he went off on a bicycle, was pushed or jumped. But we responded to that, and we walked down. Luckily, he landed on one of the spiral truck, like that, so the trucks could get down the bottom. And he landed on that, and we took him out in a Stokes basket, Stokes cage. I can't remember who the chief was or who was with me at the time. There was another rescue we had up on Block Mountain. This kid walked up, two kids walked up, and about 2/3 of the way up, one kid hit his head just a little bit. Of course, we didn't know that. The other kid ran down and reported it, So myself and my partner, I can't remember who that was, we climbed up, and that morning I put on a new pair of boots, and not only did my feet hurt, but I scuffed them up real good. We got up to this kid, and he was sitting up. He had a little bump on his forehead because he stumbled, and a little cut. And of course, we had him do the alphabet and count and, checked his eyes and everything. And we said, "Why didn't you come down on your own?" I was tired. I didn't want to. And, they had Flight for Life. I think they were in the air, or they're on standby. But there was rescues down below, police down below. We were, but that's just the way it went sometimes. We had other certain rescues, and some of them were pretty gory, but I won't go into that. But it's about all I have.
All righty, well, thank you. Our final speaker tonight is Lynn Starr, whose memories of Henderson and its old fire station on Atlantic Street date back to the 40s. She had a career with the Henderson Police Department and Fire Department when, as you heard from Garen, when both services were being operated out of the station in the old City Hall at Basic and Water. She was also near Ground Zero during PepCon and has a number of stories that she's going to give us tonight. So, Lynn?
Can you hear me? No?
Is it turned on?
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
My name is Lynn Starr. I've been a resident of Henderson since the earth was hot, I think. I was born in 1944. It's a real pleasure to speak tonight because my late husband was fire chief here, Dale Starr, from 1978 until 1990. He was here for over 30, he was employed by the fire department for over 37 years. We were married in 1991, and for more than 23 years, we enjoyed a lifetime together until he passed away in 2014. I began my second employment with the City of Henderson in 1984, filling in temporarily for Henderson Municipal Court clerk who took maternity leave. And at the end of, when she came back to work, the position with the fire department became available, and their fire department secretary, Greta, was retiring. At that time, both the fire department and the police department were under the public safety division. And Baba Anselmo was the public safety director, Jim Goff was the fire chief, and Jim Goff was the police chief, Dale Starr was the fire chief. And I was the secretary to both of them. My primary duty was payroll. I understand from Chief White that's still the primary. That came first, always. We were located over across the street where the Swaddell Justice Building is now, in the old City Hall. And my office was in front of the Detective Bureau. And on most days, it was kind of like living in a Barney Miller episode. It was crazy over there. Needless to say, we didn't have computers at the time. That was in the dark ages before computers. My Selectric typewriter was my weapon. I took shorthand. A lot of times, if they didn't have any other means, I took depositions. My favorite teacher, my shorthand teacher that gave me my career, made my career possible, never taught me what those short forms were for some of those depositions that I took, the terms. Once we got back to being separate from the police and fire, I went to work for just the fire department. And then came the day of the computers. And if any of you are old enough to remember the times, in came the monitors with the sort of little screens, and then they sat on top of a big box that sat on top of your desk with the big box underneath, and the printer over here, and you had this little tiny area to work with, and then the screen came on, and you didn't know what to do with anything. And it was a mess. Anyway, we sorted through it, and through trial and error, finally we got moved down to the new fire station down in Pittman, which was located on Gibson. It was it was in the same building as the city shop. We had a fire pole that went with still have it.
It's at Station 86.
Oh, okay.
We pulled it out of the trash and installed it in the...
Pepcon blew it down, yeah.
I got to give credit to some other people around in the room for recognizing that it was getting thrown away.
Oh, good, good.
About $8,000.
Anyway, we moved down there. We had, ambulance billing was a big deal. Chief Starr was adamant about retaining the ambulance service with Henderson Fire Department. He never, ever wanted to see it be contracted out. He wanted to see the paramedic program in, and that's one of the last things he saw in before he retired. He was so happy to see that brought in. That was his baby. But getting back to the computer system, we had, the DOS system. The city never gave us much instruction. Finally, we had what we called the SMART system. It consisted of a data manager, a word processor, a spreadsheet, and you could write a program that all of this would interwork with. And so I put the ambulance billing service on it because finance didn't want it. Nobody wanted it. I was stuck with it. I had to learn what Medicare and Medicaid would accept and wouldn't accept and all of this stuff. And the guys had to take all the information on the ambulance report. And it was a mess, but we finally got it all kind of finely tuned, and the SMART system worked, and it worked good. It started really producing, and in the long run, it outlasted me. Finance was still using it the last I knew. Anyway, so that was our first computer system. Chief Starr hated it, hated computers. That was not his generation. We went to many, many classes, and every time we came out, it was the same situation. You know, he said, answer them when they called or when they came in on his line, I had to answer. Anyway, let's see. When the administration offices moved down to the new building in Pittman next to the shop on Gibson Road, the surrounding area was just desert, pretty much, until you got up near Kid Marshmallow and Ocean Spray and American Pacific Drive. We had to go out Lake Mead onto Gibson Road to get to the new offices. We passed Pepcon on the left when we drove out. There was no freeway interchange, just a lot of desert between the plant areas and Gibson Road and the first stages of the auto mall. And I tell you this because on the morning of May 4th, 1988, Chief Starr and I left the administration offices en route to City Hall to conduct some usual business. And we noticed the plumes of odd-colored smoke coming from Pepcon. Chief Starr immediately called it into dispatch because the Henderson Fire Department was first responder. We drove on the graded dirt freeway. There was no freeway there, but the graded dirt part, because that was the fastest way to get down to that area. And we went as far as we could on that, and when we drove out, we were sitting right in front, you know, fairly right in front of the plant and looking at it and noticing, you know, you're just kind of in awe of that situation. There was smoke coming out. We noticed when we drove up that there was a flash on the one side, kind of going towards Boulder City area, going that direction. And a big flash, and then a big bunch of billows. And we stopped, and there was no noise. And Chief Starr said, "This is the strangest color." And then he said something about there's probably going to be a lot of tragedy. I don't know what he said. Everything just stopped still for me. And I looked down at the ground, and I thought to myself, yeah, we're going to be the first casualty, because I saw the shock wave coming and the bushes laying down like that, and all the windows were up in the car, and I turned like this at the same time that it exploded. The whole car just jumped, went in the air, came back down. The hood was all pushed in, the top glass came in. I just felt like I'd been hit all over slapped every inch of me, and this ear plastered over like that. And, you know, it was just instant. Anyway, we both looked at each other and got out of the car and stood there for a second. And he looked, I guess, to see if the tires were flat or what. And the fire was really raging at this point. There were people running around at the parking lot and running out in the desert. And he jumped back in the car and told me to jump in the back seat. There was glass all over the place. I jumped in the back seat. He got the car started again. We went forward. There was a man out in the front parking lot there by Kid Marshmallow, walking around trying to get people to take off. And we drove up to him and asked him if he wanted to get in the car with us, that we were going to get out of there. And he said no, that he was going to make sure that people got out of there. And with that, Dale threw the car in reverse, and we got out of there, you know, backed up as fast as he could, and we took off and got up by Lake Mead, and Officer Bill Adamite was there directing traffic. He saw us, and he had us turn out on Lake Mead, and as we went out on Lake Mead, I looked up and I heard this big boom, the big boom, and I saw a fireball come over, and all the glass, the car again went up in the air. All the glass came in on me again, and I don't have good language on a good day. I really blew then. And luckily, we lost all connection with the dispatcher. Anyway, the car was really a mess then, and it limped. It made it back to Rose de Lima emergency room, and he dumped me off at the emergency room there, and the car never would start again. Officer Adamite came up and got Chief Starr and took him to the command post, and I got my stitches sewn up. I had a couple of cuts. We both lost 35 to 45% of our hearing in that little deal. We were lucky we didn't lose our lives. And Chief Starr later bought the engine to that car and put it in his 39 Chevy Master Deluxe. I have a picture out there of it in the lobby. Our offices down at the fire station looked like a Gatling gun had gone across and took out the glass and threw it into the walls across. Yeah, the furniture, and it put holes in the ceiling on the second floor. You could see it blew the pole over, I know. In the quarters, the company quarters up above, you could, from the electrical room down below. There was a nice big space. You could shake hands with somebody through that. Through the chief's office, there was a nice big space up above, and
That big building, you moved the building
the structure of it, yeah,
off about a foot or so.
yeah,
Old structure, but
yeah. My computer, my wonderful computer was sitting there flashing, program unknown. They repaired things, or I know that we were still in that crazy building for quite a while. Chief Starr, as I said, he retired then in 1990, but not before he tied up some loose ends, such as making sure that the paramedic program was in place. And he always wanted to be sure that the emergency ambulance service stayed with the fire department. That was his main goal. I think the PepCon explosion may have given everyone a wake-up call regarding another type of explosion, and that's population, that needed addressing. He felt that it was an issue that had been shoved aside for too long with the donut hole situation with the plant. The plants are in the county's jurisdiction, and we as a fire department were never allowed to conduct any inspections in there. So we didn't know how PepCon was storing their ammonium perchlorate, which they produced, or which was used in their production of rocket fuel. And as a result was the explosion. So, poor housekeeping, yes. And in fact, the county fire chief called Dale on the following Monday and asked him for all his inspection records of PepCon. And I won't tell you what Dale told him. It was not nice. But anyway. But it did bring a lot of things to light that needed correction, and I think have been. I continued to work for the fire department until 1991 when I transferred to Henderson Municipal Court, where I finished out my career as a court clerk and retired in 2002. I just want to say at this time that I'd like to thank our fearless leader of the Henderson Historical Society, Lou Laporta. As well as my parents and all of the members of the truly greatest generation for coming here during the war effort and starting this great city. Because of you, there's a lingering spirit here that abides here. It unifies and strengthens us anytime our welfare is threatened, and Henderson is a great place. Thank you.
All right, well, thank you, Lynn. So do we have any questions? Well, I don't see any cards being raised, so I guess, yes?
I was going to say, so you talked about engine 1 and how it's up in Tonopah, and you're trying to get it. So who has it, and why aren't we getting it?
Well, I'll leave that to the chief, because it's in his capable hands. But I'll start with the first part of yours. When the city modernized, it sold off its old fleet, and a lot of the rural departments picked those up. So that engine went to Tonopah almost as a gift, from what I understand. Hey, here's our old engine, you can have it. They've kept it in great shape. The chief has been working diligently.
Yeah, it's a nostalgic engine for them now. So they're a little attached, they use it just for parades, which we would love to do. So we're in the process, we do have the mayor's support there, Mark is very excited to relocate this engine. And so we're using as much as we can right now to try to get an inroad there and an opportunity to purchase it for our team.
Yeah, there was a question in the back.
Yeah, I was just interested in the average response time for the fire, company currently, as compared to maybe back in the early 90s. Do you have any statistics about that at all? Or is that a hard thing to measure?
No, we keep track of response times constantly. Typically, our response time, we want to keep anywhere in the city within 6.5 minutes. I don't know the stats back in 1990.
I actually have a question for you that just occurred to me because you're talking about the numbers of stations. How are the stations numbered? Because there's obviously some rhyme or reason to that.
Some numbers and a half.
That's what I'm wondering, yes. Does somebody win if you pick the right number ahead of time? Or how are the numbers
They're numbered by battalions. So battalion is a group of stations that represents an area in town. So when Henderson first started, there you had battalion 9, which was all 9 numbers. And then in 2000? So we got the second battalion, 2002. When we had all the stations open on the road, we divided the city into 2 different battalions.
Okay.
And so we had battalion 8 on the east side and battalion 9 on the west side. And so the first number, and the number of the fire station is the battalion, so the 8. So every on the east side, those stations will all start with an 8. And the second number is the actual station number. So 81 is the battalion, 8 on the east side, station 1.
All right. Just curious. Very interesting.
I have a question. Does anyone know what happened to the 1941 Max that was in the distance station?
Well, I've been hunting for that as well, Chief. No. So the Mac was the first. I thought that the Chief's talking about the different engines that we've had, right? And as a historian, I thought the Mac was our oldest engine when I first started out. But then as I started discovering just how dynamic it was being an early city, things changed, right? So the best I can tell, there's a Mac, but I don't have the serial number to prove it. It's over on the west side. It's owned by a private owner. It fits every description of our old Mac. It's just sitting in his front yard. But I don't have the serial number, so I can't. I've talked to the gentleman, and he doesn't know where he came from. He bought it from a relative. So we don't have the history of that Mac. So, Chief, I don't know where that Mac went. So.
Do you remember an old truck, I was thinking it was a Mack, that they chopped down and made into a pickup and set up at the city yards? Do you remember
You're
that?
talking about the old CAP? It was a pickup?
Yeah, but it was a fire engine, but they...
Yeah. We got that from the Civil Air Patrol from Old
Oh,
City
okay.
Airport.
I couldn't remember what, yeah, but I remember seeing it sitting up there. The old city yards, yeah.
Okay,
I can
and
take a look at that back and know which one it was because there's, the pump gear lever, we had to shift it over to place and put it back to take it out of pump gear. And the pump gear handle broke and we had to weld it back together. And if that thing's got a weld on the pump handle, that'd be it.
The next day the chief gives me off, I'm going to go over. I'm going to see if there's a weld on that pump handle. So,
there's something to look for.
yeah.
Any other questions? Otherwise, let's thank our panel for a wonderful presentation.